Hi, and welcome to the final Esri Law Enforcement webinar of 2016. I'm John Beck, as always, the Law Enforcement Manager for Esri. And today I have a couple guests that we haven't had this year. First one is Stacy Belladin. She's our Public Safety Education Specialist. And I'm also joined by Amy Varela, the Crime Analyst for Redlands Police Department, Esri's hometown PD. Today we're going to be talking about how to build information products for law enforcement workflows using Esri story maps. So let me go over the agenda real quick. Hold on. First, we're going to talk a little bit about what story maps are, give you a basic overview of them, and then Stacy's going to show us how to build a story map. And then I'm going to show a few user examples of police departments that have implemented story maps at their agencies. And then finally, Amy's going to show us a story map that Redlands PD built about the San Bernardino terrorist attack of last year. Finally, at the end, as always, we'll have some questions, so you can ask your questions in the chat window. If we have time during the webinar, we'll answer them then, and hopefully at the end we'll also have some time to answer a few questions there. If we don't have time to get to your questions, then we'll respond to you directly after the webinar with the email. So let's get started. What are story maps? Story maps are simply web apps that combine interactive maps with multimedia content, could be photos, videos, and they combine this content with your narrative, stories about your agency and the good work that your agency does. Story maps can be shared on PCs, on tablets, on any mobile device, anywhere, anytime, just like all of our Esri stuff. And story maps can be either hosted by Esri in the cloud, so if you're putting out a public information map, sharing information about an event in your city, you can share it on your public maps in the cloud, or you can download the templates and host them yourself if it's a law enforcement only product or map. So let's turn it over to Stacy and get started with how to build a story map. Stacy's going to go over a few how-tos on building your own story map, and let's go ahead and give it over to Stacy. Hi, Stacy.
Thanks, John, and hello, everyone. Today, I want to walk you through how you can easily make a story map or two. But first, before we get started, I want to talk about some things to consider before preparing your story map presentation. So using this story map here on a memorial to fallen officers, I want to help guide you through what are some of the things you might consider. The first thing, and obviously, is that you need an idea or ideas for your story map. Any of our 8 configurable story map types available to you help provide a variety of ways to tell your story. For this particular story map, someone had the idea in Salt Lake City to put together a memorial for fallen officers and to show the locations of where they have been memorialized and their stories. They used a story map tour template to put these together. So what else might be a good story map idea? Well, anything really. For example, you may be a PIO looking to put together information on, let's say, different community resource officers that you have in your jurisdiction. So you may use something like a story map tour here or a short list story map that may work best for you. Let's say you're a crime analyst or you're a detective and you need to present a timeline of events in a robbery series. You may then want to consider something like a map series story map. Your ideas help to guide you in what type of story map you need, and I'll show you where to find those in just a moment, and how you may need to organize your elements, which is the next thing to consider, the elements that go into your story map. What is it that you want to include in your story map? Elements can be lots of different things. It could be text, such as here. It could be web links, so you could have links to your different parts of your story. And then you could, of course, have maps. You definitely have web maps available. And then you have media, right? So you want to consider all of these different elements and how you might organize them. But let's talk about media. Media is a very important part of a story map because photos, videos, and different graphics that support the story is what really lures your viewers into it, and it keeps them interested. In most story maps, your media must be stored somewhere, and that's really an important thing to think about. And that storage can be anywhere that's a URL accessible location. So for example, Flickr or Picasa is ideal for photos, and story maps can work directly with your Flickr or Picasa albums and photo stream to fetch your optimal image size and use for story map. So that's one option available. You can also use the ArcGIS Online organization for uploading and storing images. Now, there are a couple story map builders, different types, that will let you drag and drop locally stored images now, and they automatically get optimized, uploaded, and stored with the story map app. As of the newest ArcGIS Online release, which happens to be today, those are the Cascade, Story Map Journal, and Story Map Series. Be mindful, though, that these photos that you upload and store in your story map will be stored in your organizational account and will have the same sharing permissions as your story map. So depending on how you share them is important. The other types of story maps that you have will help you determine where you might want to store them, how you organize them, whether it's online in your own servers, which many of you have, or if it's using Flickr or Picasa. For videos, YouTube and Vimeo are favorites, but you also have other options to choose from as well. So those are some of the things to consider when you're starting to build a story map. And with that said, now let's look at building an actual story map. So I'm going to give you an example, a scenario, and in this example, I'm a crime analyst in the Philadelphia Police Department, and I'm assisting in the planning of a scheduled large protest that's going to be happening in our downtown area. As part of this planning process, I've created a web map in my ArcGIS Online organization, which is for law enforcement only, and it's showing numerous resources that will be available during the protest, as well as the protest route and other information that is pertinent and that will help for briefings and roll calls. Further, I've helped gather intelligence on the protest leader and other events that they have held, and I want to help provide some context and officer safety information for the officers working the event. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to build a story map using Story Map Journal. Story Map Journal provides you the ability to make journal entries similar to how you would present it in, say, a roll call or briefing type setting. So I'm going to start this story map from my content in my law enforcement organization, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an app using a template. Story maps are one of the many web apps available in ArcGIS Online, and these are configurable apps available to you. So I'm going to build a story map, and here is where you can find the different types of story maps that we have available on ArcGIS Online. And so you can scroll through these, and you can actually click on them to get a little brief, some information about them to determine what kind of map you want to use. In this case, I'm going to use the Story Map Journal, and I'm going to create a web app. Now, to be able to find or search or access your story map at a later time and have others as well, you must, of course, name it, and I'm going to name it Protest Story Map Journal. And I'm going to give it some tags, and those tags help provide meaning to your finding your story map. So here I'm going to tag Philadelphia, and I'm going to tag protest. Okay. You can add an optional summary if you want, and it's going to save it in my folder in my content. So I'm going to go ahead and click Done. And now each story map, different type of story map, has what's called a builder. It's an application that helps guide you through completing your story. It's similar to like a wizard. And each builder is slightly different because each story map is different, but they all work in similar ways. So it'll help you guide through the process of building a story map. So this builder gives you, first gives you an option of which layout you want to use. Do you want a side panel, or would you like a floating panel here? I'm going to just accept the default of a side panel, and we're going to click Start. So I'm going to click Start here. Now the first thing I need to do is provide a name to my map journal, and I'm going to call it slightly different. I'm going to call it just Protest Briefing, if I can spell it right. and I'm going to click the next button. All right, so when I click next, the builder starts you on the first page or cover page, which is known as the home section. So you see we have a main stage on the left here, and then you have, on the right, and you have the side panel on the left. So what is it that I want to put in the home section? Well, the home section is your cover page, and so I want to put some information in there that just tells about the protest route and some of the different resources as an introduction. So how to do that is I'm actually going to take the web map that I created in my ArcGIS Online organization and use that as my guide. So I'm going to pick my protest plan map. And so now here it says protest plan map, and I can edit this if I want to, but I'm very familiar with the map, so I'm going to leave it as is. And then it gives you some other options for changing it and what it looks like in your main stage. So you can change the location, you can leave the map default, or you can customize it. And by customizing it, you can zoom in, zoom out, in, pan out, that sort of thing. And if you decide to do that, you save your map location. I'm just going to click cancel. I think it looks great how it is. I can do the same thing with the content. So as the content, it's going to default to what I had left in my web map. However, again, I can custom configure it so I can turn on and off resources and save it as is. I could also have different configurations on pop-ups, so different pop-ups of information. I will again leave that as a default. As for extras, you can have an overmap. We'll show you a brief overview map here of your area. And you can also add a legend. So I'm going to go ahead and check the box for legend, and I'm going to click Next. So the next window allows you to add the supporting information for your home section. In this case, I'm going to provide an introduction in what we will be discussing during the briefing and put that in this box. And I'm going to click Add. And when I click Add, you can see that my home section is complete. If for some reason I wasn't happy with the way it looks, I can choose the Edit function, and I can go back in and make changes. I can also, at this time, and I can save my story map. So it's going to save it for me. And as we save, notice here it says story is private. Okay, so what it's telling me is that right now my story is private, that it's not shared with anybody. If I'm ready to share it with, say, my organization or with the public, I can then go ahead and click Share. All right, so let's move on to another section. Down at the bottom, I see where I can see Click Add Section. And once again, I'm working with the main stage content. Now in this case, the title for the section is going to be About the Protest. Okay, and at this point, I want to be able to add a photo so that I can let the officers know what had happened at the previous protest. So I happen to have a photo that was given to me by one of the intelligence officers that worked the previous event, and so I want to be able to upload this. So what I'm going to do is under Content, I'm going to click Image. Now notice this is where it's going to ask you where your image is either stored, or now, as one of the newer features for the Map Journal Builder that I had previously discussed, we can now upload a photo. So if I had it on Flickr or Google+, which is formerly Picasa, I could use that, or I could also click a link. This might be a link to, say, one of your network servers or a box folder type thing that you have the photo at, or it could be online. But in this case, I just want to upload the picture because it was given to me by one of the officers. And so what I would do is I can browse for it, or I can just drag and drop the image in here. And notice then it asks me how I want to position it in my main stage. I'm going to go ahead and just click the default of fill, and I'm going to click Next. So next, again, I'm going to add some context to the photo and what I'm trying to portray here. And again, now I have my next section. Finally, I want to add a video that I found online about, that has information about the protesters, which will provide valuable officer safety information to the front line. So I'm going to add a section, and I'm going to title this section Officer Safety Concerns. Now, since I'm going to add a video, I'm going to go ahead and click the video, and I found it online, and I happen to find it on YouTube. So I'm going to click on the YouTube button. I am going to paste in the link, and it will check to see if that video is available. And if it is, I'm going to select this video. Again, it asks you how you would like to position it, and I'm going to click Next. And again, on the next section, for the side panel content, I'm going to add some context. It happens to be text here. And I'm going to click Add. And now notice I have a video that has been added. So with that, I've started to create a pretty good map journal. And the process continues from here as we continue on using the same techniques that we've learned so far. So that's how you would build a map journal builder story map. So for the sake of time, I'd like to now show you one other type of story map, which is the story map tour. The story map tour allows you to organize photos, locations, and the rest of your context to provide a sequential tour of events. This type of story map works well, let's say, if you were providing information in a timeline fashion or as a series. This example happens to be a story map tour that gives information about the victims in the series involving the Beltway snipers in the fall of 2002. I can interact with this map, so I can then zoom in and out with this map. I can click to advance the photos in sequence if I'm interested, or I can interact with the thumbnails as well down below. Now notice this story map tour has a lot of photos and a lot of different information that's associated with it. So how do you go about organizing all of this information? Remember how I said it's very important how to gather your information first? Well, let's look at how we can create this Beltway Sniper story map tour. This time, I'm going to start my story map tour from the story map tour page on Esri's website. And notice here, I'm just going to click where it says Build a Map Tour. Now, since I happen to already be logged into my online law enforcement organization, it automatically navigated me back to my organization. If you click on the Build a Map Tour from that location and you aren't yet online, it will ask you for your ArcGIS Online credentials. So notice that in this map tour builder, remember the wizard, the first question that's asking you is where are your images or photos? This again is the most important element to consider when building a story map tour. And again, you can either store them online or use the URL to access those photos, or you can upload them to ArcGIS Online. So you might want to have your photos geotagged, and you may have descriptions as well. Well, to help ensure that you've gathered all the information you need, we have also, under the advanced options, provided you with and have created a template that helps aid in organizing this information. So this downloadable template, let me show you what this looks like here. Right, is a CSV file, and it helps guide you through the content that you need, such as the sequence of your different tour stops, the context and location, and where my photos are stored for your map tour. Right. So I've actually used this template for my Beltway Snipers information, and it organized it in the manner that it needs for a CSV file. So in this particular option, I'm going to import tour data from a CSV file. And I'm going to use my Beltway Sniper CSV file that I've made. And notice here it says loaded 22 points. So immediately I already have information available, and when I click import, it brings in all of the information that I need. It populates my story map tour. So With just a little bit of preparation beforehand by using that template, I can create the main content of a story map tour within minutes. If you need to add more steps, that's no problem as well. You can always add steps by clicking the Add button. You can organize your steps in different ways, so if you aren't happy with how they were organized, you can do that as well. And you can also go back through and import the CSV again or additional images from different locations. Again, you can always edit this, so I can call this my Beltway Snipers story map tour. And of course, I can save it. So I've saved this, and now if you notice when I go back to my content, I'm going to refresh this here. My information has been saved and stored in my content. So hopefully this gives you a sense of some ideas to get started using story maps and that these are beneficial to your organization. As you can see, getting started in story maps is easy, especially if you have the preparation at first. So with that said, I am going to go ahead and send it back to John to show you a few more examples of story maps that are being used in the law enforcement community. John?
Thanks, Stacy. So let's jump back in our PowerPoint here. And we're going to show just a few examples from different law enforcement agencies across the country. A couple examples on public outreach and sharing information with your community. One is going to be an auto theft problem in Cincinnati. The second one is who is my community policing officer from San Luis Obispo. And finally, open data and transparency story map from Philadelphia PD. And then finally, I'm going to show you a briefing similar to what Stacy just walked us through on a strategic analysis of car break-ins in Philadelphia, and then we'll go to Stacy. So let's go ahead and look at a few of those story maps that are out there. So the first one is Cincinnati PD. They had a big problem with vehicle break-ins in Cincinnati, and they wanted to get information out to the community on how to reduce this vehicle break-in problem. So they have a great story map over here. What are thefts from auto, explains to the citizens what the problem is, and then breaks it down by district. So you can see the problem in your neighborhood. This is the Mount Adams over the Rhine, Pendleton, Queensgate, West End neighborhoods. And you can actually see the street segments where they're having the biggest problems of vehicle break-ins. You can see here they have a hotspot area, 1300 Sycamore Street, and a little ad here. If you don't get it, they will. And so it's a great way to share information with the community. If you want to find out more about the problem, you can contact your district captain. And then at the end of the story map, they have a little public service announcement linked to a video with puppetry and a good friendly way to share information about the problem and how to reduce the problem in your city. The next one we're going to look at is from the city of San Luis Obispo. And what they've done is shared information about their community liaison officers, and you can look at the map and say, hey, I live in this neighborhood. Who are my community liaison officers? It puts a nice friendly face on your agency, has contact information from those officers, how to get in touch with them if you have issues in your neighborhood and you just want to talk to somebody from the agency. It's a good connection between your agency and the community. The next one we're going to look at is Philadelphia Police Department. Philly PD was part of the original Obama started this 21st century policing movement, and Philly PD was one of the original agencies to participate in 21st century policing. And part of that, one of the tenets of 21st century policing is using data, technology to share data about your agency to become more transparent and open with your community. So what Philly PD is doing is sharing information about stop and frisk, and what situations do they use stop and frisk in, and which situations do they not. And they're able to show, so here's a map of the city. You can see where all the violent crime occurs in the city. And hold on a minute while it populates. Let's see if it, My map is moving a little slow here, so let's just go on to the next one. And then you can see crime in the city versus police activity. And as it's loading, so it's a good way to show where crime occurs and where police activity occurs to show that you're not targeting a community, neighborhood, an ethnic group, but you're targeting crime problems. So you can see violent crime in the red, car and pedestrian stops in the purple, and you can see that those match up to the same areas of the city. So it's a good way to share information about your police department and the good work that you're doing. So for our next one, here's some demographic data from Philadelphia. For our next map, we're going to look at a car break-in analysis. This is also from Philadelphia. So this is all of the car break-in data from 2014. And we've used ArcGIS Pro to do a spatial analysis and look at different kinds of hotspots, statistically significant hotspots in the city, and to use this as a resource to plan a crime reduction strategy for your officers. So the analyst has done the mapping in ArcGIS Desktop or ArcGIS Pro and is able to share your analysis in a story map with your officers so they can plan the best strategy to reduce the crime problems. So you start out with an overview of the crime in the city and then able to break it into different hotspots for different areas of the city. So this is the Pier 70 area. It's a lot of big box stores here. Employees come out in the morning, find their vehicles have been broken into, so we're going to address this problem, maybe put out some bait cars. The strategy depends on the type of hotspot. So this is a great way to do a briefing, to do a roll call, to help your officers understand a problem, and then once it's been put in a story map, it can also be pushed out to mobile devices so everybody's seeing the same map, and as activities are done, we're also able to follow those, and then once the crime reduction strategy has been implemented, also able to use ArcGIS to follow up and see how we've done in reducing that crime problem. So those are just a few of the maps that we have out there that are done by agencies like you. They're not hard to do, as Stacy just showed. Now we're going to turn it over to Amy, and she's going to show us what Redlands Police Department did to tell the story of the terrorist attacks that we had. It's been a little more than a year ago this week. So Amy, why don't you take it away?
Well, thank you, John. Well, good morning, everybody. As John mentioned, about a year and 13 days ago, we had the terrorist attacks in San Bernardino. Our department, obviously, right after the incident, we were getting tons of inquiries about what we were doing, how we were handling the situation, what actually took place, and this is a great way, Story Maps is a great way to showcase exactly what happened. It's similar to a PowerPoint, but much more powerful, in my opinion. We get tons of requests from different levels of the organization, ranging from the command staff, SWAT, different officers who need to go out and do presentations, reference big, main critical incidents that take place, such as the terrorist attacks. So as you can see, we have the San Bernardino, terror in San Bernardino is our main page here. And what's really cool about it is you can just go into each incident that takes place, such as first one up is our the actual incident as to where it took place. As you can see right here, everything's interactive, moves around easily. Right here is the Inland Regional Center where it took place. But for many that don't know, this is actually where this building right in here is where the shooting took place. So it's pretty much like a great timeline to go about. So at approximately 1100 hours, 911 calls were reported that there was at a state-run facility in the regional center that serves people with developmental disabilities. Police were saying that the shooting took place during a holiday party located within the IRC's conference room. Another hyperlink right here that shows your map, and lasted about a few minutes before the suspects fled. The suspects had fired approximately 75 rifle rounds. The possible suspect, one of the suspects later identified as County Health Inspector Saeed Farouk, 28 years old, had attended the party that morning, according to reports, but reportedly left after receiving a phone call. Police believe between 10 and 30 minutes went by between Farouk's departure and the suspect's return to the conference room. Emergency personnel, firefighters begin arriving at the scene within 7 minutes of the first 911 calls, which is approximately 11:07 hours. Officers were arriving on scene. Police began reporting multiple victims shot at the scene. Several roads were shut down in the area. I included a hyperlink of the email that went out to everybody around that time, notifying everybody of the actual the location and the routes that were being shut down reference this incident. Victims are being evacuated. So as you can see, you can hyperlink each one to your picture within your sideline right here. So we have victims are being evacuated. The triage center is set up across the street at the golf course. Multiple shooters at approximately 12:25 hours. Police say that they are looking for as many as 3 shooters after sweeping the building and determining the suspects had fled. Emergency responders are also seen treating people outside, and ambulances rush in and take the injured to the hospital. So one of the hospitals that we knew were being flooded with tons of the injured was Loma Linda, and so I wanted to show how we had Loma Linda right here, which is was a great, everybody there at Loma Linda did a great job. So we have a picture here of the hospital. 12:30 hours, President Obama is briefed on the shooting by Homeland Security. He states that it does appear that there are going to be some casualties, and obviously our hearts go out to the victims and the families, he later tells CBS News. So at 13:05 hours, reports come out from family members of survivors who say the shooters were wearing military-style attire. I included a link here because at 13:05 hours is when the media starts reporting it, but law enforcement had known before. But I just wanted to make sure people knew that what was happening, one of the big issues that was happening during this incident was the injured were being taken across the street to a golf course, which was directly across the street from the IRC. And they were running up to them and asking them what was going on. So that's at 13:05 hours is when you start hearing about all these reports of what they were wearing. So here's our CAD comments when we had initially gotten the report at 11:41 hours, and you'll see at the very top up here the 3 suspects fled in northbound Waterman in a black GMC, and it has their description of what they were wearing, their tactical vests, and so on and so forth. As you can also see right in this area right here, when we were trying to figure out who the suspect was, the different spellings of the names that the analysts in San Bernardino County, San Bernardino PD were trying to figure out who this guy was, where he lived, and so forth. So this is what we were working with at the time. 1400 hours, police confirm at a news conference that there are 14 dead and numerous people wounded. Surrounding buildings are on lockdown as authorities search for the suspects. At 14:30 hours, San Bernardino Police Chief declines to say what kind of weapons were used, but that the shooters were on a mission and came in with a purpose. At about 15:05 hours, reports come in of police in pursuit of a black SUV that might possibly be occupied by the suspects. And then at 15:20 hours, police aim guns at a dark-colored SUV with shattered windows on a residential street, and a firefight ensues. So at this point, this is where Stacey was mentioning how you can include audio. At this point, I'm going to let you guys hear the dispatch recording of the audio that one of our officers, who was Sergeant Andy Capps, who was one of the first officers behind this black SUV right here. And so this is what you're hearing. That you're going to hear right now in this video. And I just want to make sure that there is a disclaimer before you see this video and you hear the audio. There are some graphic images in here, so please be ready to see those, and there may be some use of some foul language in the recording as well. So with that, I'm going to play this for you.
Freeway in front of us. Where? You just got on the 10 West.
Okay. Okay.
All 40, go with your traffic.
40, I'm clear from here. That's where I'm thinking about. And forward that to the
Tennessee State. Everybody was leaving the Convention Center 4, Tennessee.
Redlands Sam 9 priority.
Sam 9, go ahead.
I just got flagged down by an undercover officer. San Bernardino PD is behind the suspect vehicle from their shooting, they believe, westbound Interstate 10 from Alabama. I don't have any further. I'm trying to catch up and see what they need. Hey. Okay, it's a black SUV at the light at Tippy and Briar right now. It's got Utah plates.
Tippy and Briar. Call that out. Sam 9. Northbound Tippy approaching Victoria. So far, failure to yield. Northbound number 1 lane, passing Cooley. Copy, passing Cooley.
Hey, it looks like they're putting vests on inside.
Still slow priority yield. I copy eastbound San Bernardino.
Okay, they're acting furtively inside the vehicle, passing stuff around.
Copy, passing things around inside the vehicle.
Shots fired, shots fired.
I copy, shots fired. Exact 20 when you get a chance.
Eastbound crossing Richardson.
Copy, eastbound San Bernardino crossing Richardson.
They're firing at law enforcement.
Copy, subject firing at law enforcement.
Get in, get down, Art. Okay. Are we getting any fire from the vehicle right now?
I don't know. Hey, they still firing!
All right. All right. I can't tell what's going on inside the vehicle right now. I think all the fire is coming from us right now. I'm not sure.
You guys have no cover there!
Yeah, the truck right there. The truck with Utah plates. Black SUV with Utah plates. There's been nobody come out of that vehicle.
Hey!
They're all in that vehicle.
Shooting! Hey, yeah, go back. Where they at? Where they at? We get a unit. Hey, no more traffic coming westbound on the street. It's active firefight. He's stuck. He's not liking him on the right. I'll go to the right. We got the right. I got all my man in there. Who needs ammo? Right there. What do we need now? What do we need? What do we need? I can't hear shit. My ears are shot.
Some pretty powerful stuff right there. So, as you can see, we obviously can add some audio, video in there, our dispatch recording. I utilized a couple of different softwares. We had ArcScene going on there for the 3D imagery of the actual route, the pursuit that took place. We used the dispatch recording. We made this, we put this together with Movie Maker, added in the different screenshots of the different pictures that were put on the media to showcase, you know, the officers' positions when this incident took place. A couple of lessons learned during this incident. One being, oh, I'm not going to click on. Let's see if it come here. Just took a minute. As you can see, we had during the shootout a line of vehicles. Actually, it's not showing this one, but there was a ton of cars, different units that came rushing to this location. And when everybody took off and they went to go assist the other officers, the obviously when it was time to move these vehicles and when we had our officer, one of the officers that were shot, they couldn't get in rescue units to help this officer because no cars, there was nobody in there, they couldn't get them to move the vehicles, so there was an issue there with the vehicles. So that's one of the lessons learned during this. During the video that you saw and you heard of the audio, during the shootout, if you notice there's this vehicle right here, and then we're going to listen to the audio from this. The suspect's car is more over to the right, and we have a unit that's right over here, but everybody was pretty much hunkered down right here behind the Redlands Police unit. But there is this vehicle right here, and I'm going to have you listen to the audio coming from that vehicle. So give me 1 second.
Stay flat, Mama. Stay flat.
Now emergency.
Yeah, hi. I just been caught in crossfire. I just want to let you know that.
Okay, where are you at?
Right in the middle of San Bernardino Avenue, right where you were shooting. I and my granddaughter in a Hyundai.
Okay, let me transfer to San Bernardino PD. Stay on the phone. Do not hang up, okay?
Okay. Mama,
Do you see anybody running?
I don't think, I'm not looking up.
Okay.
Me and my granddaughter are ducking down.
Where, in what color Hyundai?
It's like a blue grayish Hyundai.
And where exactly are you at? On San Bernardino?
I'm on San Bernardino Avenue, right in front of my house, 1783 East San Bernardino Avenue. I'm right in front. Please. I'm in the divider.
Okay, you're in the divider. Just stay down, okay? Okay, stay down.
I am.
Okay.
Mama, stay down, Mama.
So we have a grandmother and her granddaughter are stuck in this car right here in between the crossfire. Officers did not know. Nobody knew that this vehicle was here. Did not realize till after the fact, obviously, that there was this vehicle in there. And as they called 911, you can actually hear some of the shots being fired in the background. And fortunately, both of them were not injured during this incident. And as you heard earlier, the multiple shots that were being fired, they were very, very lucky to not be injured during the shootout. So, man on the ground, local media reports say a person appears to be on the ground, but it is unclear who they are or what their injuries may be. Approximately 2 dozen officers fired some 380 rounds at the suspects. At 15:30 hours, police confirmed shots had been fired at a suspect who is down near the SUV. According to reports, a male suspect's body is on the street, while a female suspect's body has been pulled from the car. Some 1,600 unused rounds are fired on the 2 suspects, police would later say. So at 17:05 hours, police served a search warrant at the home of Saeed and Tashfeen Malik at 53 North Center Street in Redlands. An Associated Press reporter watched as half a dozen vehicles carrying helmeted police drove into the area. So just to give you an idea, the actual incident takes place right here. The red line is the pursuit. And we also have, just to give you closer look right here. As you can see, everything is, you can move the maps around. They're easy to move around and you can show things. This is actually Esri right here in Redlands, and this is where the terrorists lived, so right down the street. Just kind of a little plug there for Esri. As you can see, here's our police officers. Into the night, we had numerous officers who were out there. Our SWAT team was out there, ATF, FBI, who were surrounding the location into, the wee hours of the morning. Inside the home at 53 North Center, just different images that were shown online and in the news of how these suspects lived. They had a 6-month-old daughter. The very next day or a couple of days later, the guy who rented the house, which I believe he's in here somewhere, one of these pictures, he opened up the doors and allowed the media to come in, and they were just filming in there like crazy after the FBI had already gone through the house. So these are kind of pictures of when the media went in and just took over the whole entire house in there. Explosives, devices inside and near the home. So here we have obviously broken windows when they went in, and a door that was taken down when the FBI went in to check to see for explosive devices. I apologize, there's a little delay here with our images when they're popping up. And then here's some of our Redlands police officers who were out there. Down the street over here is where the condo was at, where they were residing, so everything was taped off. Saeed Farouk and Tashfeen Malik are eventually positively identified as the shooters responsible for the horrendous massacre at the IRC shooting, as well as the shootout with law enforcement on San Bernardino Avenue in the city of San Bernardino. The aftermath, obviously we just came to the 1-year mark about a week or so ago. They were flooded with flowers at the Inland Regional Center. A big chain link fence was put up, obviously due to the reconstruction and the demo of that actual building. So flags and memorials, and then you can also show in your story map the different images and memorial sites that we wanted to include. Here's a gathering after. This is our Chief of Police, Mark Garcia, right here, gathering to recognize the law enforcement officers that were there, who helped, who went in that day and helped those who were injured. And then the victims, the 14 victims that lost their lives that day, which is the most important thing to always remember about this incident. And obviously they will always be remembered, especially at those memorials. Their pictures are everywhere. So this is a great way to go about and showcase a critical incident that takes place in your jurisdiction, in your city, especially when the command staff or anybody else is going to be giving this presentation in the future, and if they want to have it stored somewhere on their site, on a drive for anybody to access it and who needs information on it, it's a great way to go about it. So I'm going to turn this back over to John.
Thanks, Amy. Powerful stuff. So we have a little bit of time left for some questions. I have a couple questions for you, Amy. Great use of a story map. How long did it take you to put that story map together, and what if any issues, lessons learned did you have when you were compiling all of your imagery, photos, and data into that story map?
Well, I would say once you compile all your data, so we've actually been through a couple of incidents in our city, and I've been familiar with story maps. So during this, I made sure, and our command staff made sure every time we have a major incident, anything that's being captured on the news, any clippings, any YouTube videos, social media sites, anything like that, I immediately start saving everything to a folder on my computer. So I think prioritizing and going over with the command staff exactly what it is that you want in your story map is going to be important. So before you're doing your story map, that's going to be most important, just kind of prioritizing everything, making sure you go over with those who are going to be viewing this and using it later, what they want to see and the points you want to address. So once you kind of get that all put together, which may be, a couple of days, preparing the story map isn't really that long. It's about maybe a good 1 to 2 hours. Once you have all of your images, your links, your pictures, I would say about a good 1 to 2 hours, and then kind of just like, as I go along and I show this presentation, we'll make a couple of more changes. At the end of this presentation, which I did not show, are a couple of links that after the 1-year anniversary, they, I believe it was Dateline, published a couple of videos in different segments. So we have like part 1, part 2, and part 3. So I added those in there just a couple of days ago. But there's always room for improvement. But overall, I would say about a good 1 to 2 hours. And granted that nobody's bothering you.
That's great that you're proactively preparing to create story maps now. Where do you store the data at your agency, and how do you control who has access to that data?
Well, all the data, when I pull it, it's actually on a folder on my secure drive at work. So I'll have all of the information there, and then once I start preparing it for a story map, I'll upload it to the box, which is a website place that I can access stuff and then pull images from to bring into story map.
And so who can see the story map? They have to, do you control who has access to the story map? It's just within your agency, right? Well, until now.
Correct. So when I create this, it's pretty much anybody who has an ArcGIS online user ID and password. So right now it's just me. And then those who are going to share it, they have their ArcGIS user ID and then their password, and then it's just for our particular group, because initially we just wanted law enforcement, especially just only our organization, to see it. until we determined and got confirmation that the recordings can now be heard by everyone. We released them to the public. So yes, it was initially just the law enforcement group at Redlands PD.
Okay, thanks. I think we're about out of time for questions, so let's show a couple resources. If afterwards I can send out the links that Amy mentioned about this the San Bernardino attacks. But here are some links from Esri to help you get started building your own story maps. Storymaps.arcgis.com. This webinar and all of our webinars are available at esri.com/pswebinar, and our next one will be in February, and get that one. The title of that one's Getting to Know ArcGIS Enterprise for Law Enforcement Agencies. We just rolled out ArcGIS 10.5 as well as Insights, and so we're going to talk about some of the new things we've rolled out as well as ArcGIS Enterprise. We also have GeoNet, which is our online community at geonet.esri.com/community/public safety. And we also have free online courses called MOOCs, Massive Open Online Communities, or courses, I think, where you can take these classes, work at your own pace. They usually last about 4 weeks. Coming up, we have do-it-yourself geo apps, and also going places with spatial analysis April 12th through May 13th. We also had some news about training over the past year. Stacy, do you want to talk about what's going on in training?
Sure. So if you haven't heard or haven't gone to our updated Esri training website lately, any of the e-learning that's available to you, so web courses, live training seminars that are hosted there, and then the Learn ArcGIS lessons are now free with anyone who is on maintenance with their ArcGIS subscription. So we have hundreds of different courses available for you on different topics, anything from just learning GIS all the way through learning Python and whatnot. So please feel free to go to the training website. You can actually enter in story maps to see if there's anything available for story maps as a keyword, and have fun learning.
Thanks, Stacy. So we're about out of time. If you have questions about anything that we covered today, you can contact myself, Stacy, or Amy, and we'll be glad to talk to you. Here's our email addresses, and we look forward to hearing from you. Have a great day. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Stacy.